we're focused on the future. And I'm absolutely confident that if we stay on this course, we can deliver a better and brighter future for both the Cuban people and the American people.
President Obama in Cuba, the first visit by a sitting U.S. president to the island nation in almost 90 years. Two countries rebuilding relations. Hello, I'm Arnold Naidu in Washington, D.C., and this is The Heat. Long frozen ties between the United States and Cuba continue to warm, with President Obama making an official visit to the island this week. This is the first visit by a sitting U.S. president to Cuba since 1928 and brings with it expectations and excitement. But the normalization of diplomatic relations has its stumbling blocks. Here with the latest, CCTV's Michael Voss. He joins us from Havana. And Michael, we've seen a lot happen already. What's on the agenda for the rest of the president's visit?
Well, very shortly they'll be sitting down for a state banquet, and that will be the final event of tonight. Perhaps the most important point of this visit, certainly from President Barack Obama's view, is on Tuesday morning he will give a keynote speech at the Grand Theater in Havana, which will be televised live throughout Cuba. He's going to lay out his vision for the future, how he would like to see relations develop, possibly how he would like to see Cuba develop. And I think this will be really an important moment for this trip. We're waiting to see eagerly how much he pushes, how hard he pushes Cuba on issues like human rights and democracy. Certainly so far, they've spoken a lot about it. They had an hour and a half meeting on Monday morning. Then they had a joint press conference. We heard a short clip from President Obama at the beginning of this program. It was interesting that both sides talked about positive developments that have happened over the past year, the deals that have been made, the areas of working together through areas of mutual interest like counter-narcotics and also trade and business. And then both sides also laid out clearly their differences. I think from President Raul Castro's point of view, often over the last year, Cuban officials have focused very heavily on the differences, the need to end the trade embargo, the need to give Guantanamo naval base back. President Raul Castro started his speech listing all the positives before going on to the more critical points. And he again said that engagement, learning to live, to work together and be able to have differences but not let them come in the way of a relationship was his position here. Then after Tuesday's keynote speech comes the relief at the end. You've got the baseball match between Cuba's national team and the Tampa Bay Rays. I think this is one thing that unites both countries and has done for many years. Cuba is absolutely passionate about baseball. Tickets to get into the game are really very difficult to come by, mainly invited people. We're waiting to see whether President Barack Obama will actually throw the first pitch.
Michael, when we look at these two countries and the restoration of relations, what are the major priorities, on the one hand for the Cubans and on the other for the U.S.?
I think from the U.S. point of view, at one level, it's a business, trade, economics. I think that from President Obama's point of view, he believes that if you can help and empower the entrepreneurs here, help develop a private sector with a middle class of Cubans who are not dependent on the Cuban state for their livelihood, then in the longer term, this could bring about change. He's also looking very much for business deals for American companies, be it trade or be it investments. Certainly some minor ones, one or two more important ones have been signed in the last few days. We've had an American hotel company is going to take over the management of 3 hotels here. Google is going to set up a Wi-Fi hotspot in an internet center here in Havana, offering speed 70 times faster than anything that's currently available in Cuba. Airlines, we're about to get scheduled flights from Cuba. I think from President Obama's perspective, the more business deals that can be done, the greater the cooperation there is, the harder it would be to make this policy of rapprochement reversible should there be a Republican in the White House. For Cuba, I think business trade is also an important factor here. Remember, it's been very heavily dependent for many years on help from oil-rich Venezuela. It's been receiving oil in return for doctors. Venezuela is in an economic and political crisis at the moment. The amount of assistance is coming through. I think Cuba is worried that down the road it may need to look further afield. And it certainly passed a new foreign investment law a couple of years ago. So I think this is part of President Raul Castro's attempts to expand Cuba's diplomatic reach out, to have new allies, to have new forms of trade and business. I think there's also a worry on the Cuban side that with all of this change going on, they don't want to lose the sort of the character, the exclusive identity of Cuba. They don't want to give up their ideology just because they're friends with the United States.
Thanks, Michael. That's CCTV's Michael Voss from Havana. Well, now joining us